Hello, and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be using our gel prints to make these really cute and really functional refrigerator magnets. Stay tuned. Hey. Okay, let's just jump right in. I have here a 1¼ inch punch, and I have a piece of a gel print. Now this print actually was on a tissue paper or thinner paper, so I just tacked it onto some cardstock to make it a little sturdier. And I'm just going to take my 1¼ inch punch and find some circles that I would like to use as backgrounds for my refrigerator magnets. Now what I'm looking for is something that's not too busy, but that incorporates all of the textural and color elements that I want to have from this print. So I'm just using my punch as kind of a viewfinder to see, what it's going to look like as a background once I punch it out. Now I only need 3 of them, but I'm just punching a 4th in case I need an extra for whatever reason. Now I'm going to take these and stick them on some mini gel plates to keep them from sliding around on my table while I work on them, because they are really small, and I'm going to be doing stamping and embellishing on these really small surfaces, so I want them not to move too much, and these gel plates work well for that. So let's zoom right in and get started. The 3 of these magnets are made fairly similarly, all of them, so you're going to see me do one, and then for the other 2 it's going to be the same process. I'm finding a tiny magnet. That's not a magnet, is it? A tiny stamp, and I am using some Versamark ink because I'm going to heat emboss this little butterfly onto my background here. This is I found while making these that I used a lot of these teeny tiny little stamps that come with a set, but that I would not normally use because they're so small. They have very limited uses for me. So it was pretty cool in that aspect. I am applying some ebony super fine embossing powder by Wow, and I have my little triangular embossing container there, which I love. And this is my heated tool. I'm just going to heat emboss it. I cut a lot of that out because you don't need to see that. But with the heated tool, it takes a little bit longer. I have an embossing gun, but it's not plugged in, so I just used the heated tool. And there we have our heat embossed black butterfly on our background there. I'm going to get another tiny little stamp and some Ranger archival ink. And it's important that it's archival. You don't want to use distress or anything that will reactivate when it's wet. You want this to dry permanent because you're going to be putting glue on it. So I have some archival ink here. I'm not sure what color this is, maybe turquoise, a corresponding color to the ones I have in the background. And I am just stamping sort of a line for our sentiment, a place for the sentiment to live. I didn't want it to be floating out in the middle of the background there. And so what I have is a tiny little sentiment that I printed on my laser printer on some, I think that's graph paper. I like to print on graph paper when I'm making sentiments. And I have my little, they're not tweezers. I don't know what those for. I think they're for making jewelry, but they operate like tweezers. And I am just using my archival ink to put some color around the edges of my tiny sentiment. And this is my reptile glue. And I'm just going to stick this little word hope right off center to that butterfly. Okay, and that's pretty much the gist of what we're going to do. A little bit of stamping, a little bit of embossing, put a sentiment, and then we're going to add a little bit more color later on in the video. But the next one, that was hope. The next one, I believe, is faith. So I'm going to grab a little cross stamp and do some heat embossing on this one as I did on the other. As I said, that is Versamark ink. It is great for heat embossing, even though you can use regular inks when you're embossing. Versamark is nice and clear. So I can go ahead and put my super black on top of it. It's important to use, I found that it's important to use super fine embossing powder when you have a stamp that has a lot of detail. I mean, this one doesn't. The butterfly had a good bit of detail. This one's pretty straightforward. But when you have teeny tiny little details and cutouts and places like the butterfly stamp did, Superfine is the way to go, because you can get all of those, you can keep all those details and they're not hidden by, big chunks of embossing powder. So I'm going in here with my line stamp that I had before, that I used before, and the word sentiment here is faith. So I'm just using my scissors to cut it out. It's an easy way to make your own sentiments. Just print them on the regular notebook paper, graph paper. The graph paper, I find, gives it a little bit of visual interest when you can still see the graph in the background. But because it's still white, I am using my stamp pad to add a little color around the edges. And I'm going to glue this down like I did the other. This is reptile glue. You can use art glitter glue, any other PVA glue that will dry super clear. I mean, that part is going to be important later when we put the magnets together. But I found that reptile glue, when it's done drying, you can't even tell that it's there. It dries really, really clear. So here's my final magnet. I have a heart and arrow stamp that I'm going to heat emboss again. I'm stamping it a little bit off center so the whole stamp won't be visible. And I'm going to go in with my ebony superfine embossing powder like I did with the other two. Okay, so I just jumped ahead a little bit on this one. You guys have seen me do this twice already. I don't think you need to see it again. So I'm jumping forward to the embellishing. I'm just going to do a light embellishing with this bright, beautiful orange color called Tiger Lily from Ranger. It is an archival ink color. That is the ink pad, and I just put the re-inker in a palette. Now I'm going to use the palette to paint a little bit of this orange color onto the backgrounds of my little circles. I think orange goes well with this lime green turquoise theme I have going on. It's a nice bright pop of color, and I think once I do the rest of the embellishing, it all just come together. I am going to actually throw a little bit of music on in the background and let you guys watch me finish these up, and I'll be back. Okay, I'm back, and these are our three little circles. They're all finished, and I touched up the faith one with a little bit of that re-inker to make it a little darker so it matches the other two. Now I have my Dollar Tree glass gems here. Now, I mean, this is a great value because you get 15 or 16 of them, and they're a pretty good size, but I mean, it's the Dollar Tree, so you have to examine them, make sure none of them have chips or, chunks missing or occlusions, anything like that. So I picked three good ones, and now I'm going in and covering everything we just did with a layer of glue. Now, this is kind of scary because you don't want to mess everything up, but this is reptile glue, and the reason why I chose it is because it dries really clear. So I'm just going over it with my finger, trying to get it really even. Like, you don't want, super big globs here and just a little layer there. You want it to be as even as possible. When you press this down, you want to make sure you push out any visible air bubbles or anything like that. Just get good contact with the glass and the paper, and you should be good to go. Now on the back here, you'll notice I actually took a stamp and stamped the plain white background with that turquoise archival ink, just to give it a little bit of interest, because you will be able to see it once everything is put together. So this is just me doing it one more time so you guys can see the process again. Getting an even layer of glue on top of our image, and I will push over the top with the glass gem. Now these glass gems are not uniform in size, but I found that this 1 1/4 inch punch pretty much works most of the time. If you notice that there's an overhang or anything, you can just trim that off with some scissors, but most of the time it works pretty well. And all of this extra glue, you can just rub that right off. Now this will take some time to dry. As you can see, these are our three images here. I skipped the third one. I didn't think you guys needed to see it again. But this is what they look like at this stage. They're still pretty wet. You can see when I push down, the glue still moves. If you give it a little more time, it starts to look like this, clears up. The longer you let it dry, the clearer the image gets. But while it's at this stage, I want to go ahead and put the magnets on. Now, these are 1/2 inch rare earth magnets. They're very strong magnets, so you want to use a good glue if you're using these. This is extreme power, thick super glue that I got from Hobby Lobby. I think it's meant for doing miniature reproductions, like miniature cars, stuff like that, and gluing those pieces together, but it works well in this scenario as well. So you don't want to use too much. I'm probably using too much because once you push it down, it's just gonna gush out. But make sure you get good coverage though. I mean, stick it on there in the center and just push it down. You don't have a lot of working time with this super glue, obviously, so you want to eyeball it pretty well. Just get it stuck down there and go ahead and put that off to the side and let it dry. And this is our final result. I think these came out really cute. We got a chance to use our gel prints, which is always good. And these will make great gifts or great crafts fair items. So I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. And if you did, please leave a like. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Have a creative day, you guys. Bye-bye.